Hello, everybody. Welcome to the National Parents Union Nightly Restorative Check-In. I am Marisol Quevedo Reducha. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd. Happy June, everybody. Happy Tuesday and happy June. As I said, I'm Marisol Quevedo Reducha. I am the mother of Camerina, Emilia, and Sofia. I am the grandmother of Isabela Luna and Cynthia Eliana. I am the daughter of Irma Navran. I am the granddaughter of Camerina, Alejandro, Francisco, and Carmen, and I'm the wife to Daniel. We start our show every day with our breathing technique, and I think now more than ever, we all need ways that we can very quickly de-stress. We can very quickly get into a more relaxed mode. And so I offer you again this breathing technique. So it's called 4, 7, 8. We inhale for 4 seconds, and on the countdown, we hold for 7, and then we release for 8. And we do this 4 different times. So we do this, it's a round of 4. And the purpose of this, again, is to go into a quick relaxation, quick de-stress. And this, studies have shown that this is really beneficial to your health overall over the long term, doing it just once a day. And so let's go ahead and get started. So we start by releasing, I'm sorry, that's not the word I wanted to use. So what do you call that? Exhaling. Okay, so we start out by exhaling. And then inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a little off. Everything that's going on in our country and in our world, specifically in our country, it's just continues to take a toll on ourselves, on our loved ones, on our families. And I think this is a really important time to really honor yourself, to honor how you're feeling, and to honor what your needs are. I think this is the time more than ever, that you have to listen to your instincts, that we have to listen to what our bodies, what our emotional selves, what our minds, what our spiritual selves are saying to us. And it is a time for an extreme amount of grace for yourself. You know, people are still trying to work. People are still, trying to raise their kids. Kids are finishing school and needing mental health days, needing naps, needing rest, whatever it is that you need, you have to take it, because I really don't think there's anything right now, aside from people who are who are essential workers, or who are, I consider essential workers right now, so people who may be organizing. But all of us are going to have our opportunity to have our voices heard. So those of us that are out right now, that are speaking, that are elevating our voices, they're going to need time to rest. And then others will need to step up. So we all just need to be in our places, in the place that we know that we need to be for this time. And let me see here. So if my sound is staticky, I might have, okay, let me know if it's okay, Sasha. So with that, my plea to you is, and my prayer for you is to please take care of yourselves. Please listen to yourselves. Please know that the only expectation of you for you right now should be to listen to what your body, your mind, your spirit, your emotional self, your mental health self, to those needs, and act to fill those needs. Give yourself that permission. Give yourself that grace at this time. The work, all of those things, the schoolwork, all of those things can all get handled and taken care of. You know, it's to give yourself what it is that you need. So I'm very happy to announce, to introduce you to our guest tonight, Lakisha Muhammad. So Lakisha is coming to us from Arizona, is it Phoenix? Hi, Lakisha.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Is my sound coming through okay?
Yes, I hear you just fine.
Okay. So if it comes, let me know, Sasha, and I can try to switch over. I think my Wi-Fi is okay. Sorry, it's just stuff I have to get taken care of. Okay, so you are one of the people who I've never met before, and I absolutely love when I have guests on that I haven't either met in person, or we haven't really had that opportunity aside from Facebook to see each other. Let me just give you a quick little breakdown. So the National Parents Union was formed in January, and it is a group of amazing warriors for education. They're advocates, they're activists, they're agitators. They are fighting the fight for our Black, Brown, and kids with needs, for all students, but specifically for our Black and Brown students, and students with special needs in our educational system. So
Needed.
it is so needed. And these are grassroots organizations. They're individual, they're nonprofits, but all coming together and having a unified voice. So having you on, this show is, so the National Parents Union, I believe it's a closed group, but this show is open. So just so you know, you're speaking to everybody. So with that, can you please introduce yourself, share anything that it is that you would like, and we just have our conversation based on what it is that you say, that, and I also I listen to myself and see like which way do we need to go. So
I love that. I do that quite often. You know, I'm a person who is I don't know, a reformed perfectionist, I like to say of myself. So sometimes I challenge myself to not prepare and not, right, just see where we go and where it takes me. And sometimes that's difficult for me. So I challenge myself in doing that. So this is going to be fun, Marisol. I am Lakisha Muhammad, and I'm going to take from you a little bit. I'm going to borrow from you a little bit. I am the mother of Amir, Yasina, and Hassana. I am wife to Dwayne. I am daughter of, and I have an interesting story, but I'm the daughter of Helen and James and Cassandra and Willie, 4 parents. Granddaughter to lots more people, because I got a lot of parents. I'm not going to name everybody. I am a transplant here in Phoenix, Arizona. I live in the Phoenix area from the great state of South Carolina. I'm a Southern girl, born and raised, and I've been here in Phoenix in this area for about 13 years now. My work here includes nurturing families. I am a midwife. I work with the mamas and the babies and the daddies, and welcoming the babies into the world and nurturing families and getting them off to a healthy start.
You're a spiritual worker, because you work in that space between life and death. Like you live in the spirit, you work in the spirit space when children are coming into the world.
Yes. I mean, it is, you know, people call it veil. Like there's just a very thin line between the physical and the spiritual. And to stand in that place in between is something that is very humbling to me. And I don't take that position that charge, that calling lightly at all.
How did you come to this work?
Oh, I got pregnant with twins the first time around.
So that's Amir and
I got pregnant with twins, and
is that Amir and Yasana?
I'm sorry.
Amir and is it Yasina?
Amir and Yasina. Those are my twins' names. They are 16 now. They'll be 17 in August. And when you get pregnant with twins, you soon find out that you're considered high risk, no matter what your general health state is. So when I became pregnant with them, my first pregnancy, I had every test and screening and everything in the book thrown at me. And being the person that I am and the personality that I have, I'm not the one to just say, oh, okay, all right, if that's what we need to do, then no, I'm asking questions, I'm researching, I'm trying to figure it all out. And the more I learned about birth and about pregnancy and about parenting, the more I wanted to know. And it was really their pregnancy was the catalyst that led me down the road to becoming a midwife.
Did you have a midwife at their birth?
I didn't. I went the OB route. I done what most parents do, and what I actually preach against now is I just Googled, or back then, I'm gonna date myself a little bit. You look in the phone book and you say, okay, where's the doctor? I'll go to this one. And I just chose the hospital birth because that's what you did. That's what I thought that you did. I didn't realize the wealth of knowledge and compassion and care that a midwife would offer. And being from the South, the opportunities just weren't really there. They were born in 2003. So much has happened in the last, I would say, decade around birthing and the options that are available. And lots of it has to do with the internet and social media. Now that information is so readily available, but it wasn't when they were born. And, for me, I just went with what I thought was the safest route. But what we now know for most Black and brown women isn't the safest route. And what I talk to in community about a lot is how if you are of good health, if you're strong, then choose an out of hospital birth. Seek out that midwife, find that information that you need.
The work, to me, it's ancestral medicine.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's a way of really connecting us and rooting us back to the generations of women before us.
I couldn't agree more. It really is, my calling to become a midwife, I call myself the Jonah of midwives, the biblical reference, because I ran for so many years. I would meet people and they would say, oh, you're a midwife, right? And I'm like, no, I'm just a doula. I just help. I don't do that part. And they're like, are you sure you're not a midwife? And I'm like, no. I felt it.
What's the difference between being a doula or being a midwife?
Well, a doula is just a labor support person. And my experience largely as a doula was in the hospital. So I would meet with families a few times before their baby was born, and I was there and I would help them. I would remind them of breathing techniques, such as the one that we began this webinar with, or the show with, and I would just help them throughout the process. But the medical responsibility wasn't on me. And what I found was, and what was the shift for me, I was with a beautiful Black family almost 2.5 years ago. Their baby is almost 3 years old now. And they did everything right. They went to all the classes. They hired me as their doula. They researched the hospital that they went to. They tried to find the best care provider that they possibly could. They did everything that, all the check boxes, they did them. And in their birth experience, they had every intervention that they possibly could have except a C-section. It was 3 days long. It was taxing. It was just a really, really grueling experience. And that birth really threw me. It took a long time for me to reflect on that birth, to think about it, to think, where did we go wrong in all of this? What could I have told them? What could we have done differently? And the only conclusion that I came to from that reflection was they weren't supposed to be there. They weren't supposed to be there. That wasn't supposed to be their care providers. But what was their other options? You know, what else were they supposed to do if there were no Black home birth care providers that they could have gone to that would have attracted them and been able to explain the process to them? No Black owned birth centers that could have attracted them, and that could have been an option for them. They chose the best route that they could. So then I thought to myself, well, being a doula is nice and it's important work and I enjoy it. I love doing it, but it's not enough. It just wasn't enough. And I chose to become a midwife, not so that I could have the power, you know, in the scenario, but so that I could give it back to the parents. Mm-hmm. So that I was in a position that I could say, okay, if this is what you're choosing, then I stand by you and I'm going to support you and I'm going to help you through it. So 2.5 years later, here we go. And it's also kind of a story in power of manifestation, because as soon as I said, okay, all right, I'm ready. I'm gonna stop running. I hear the call, I'm gonna do it. Within a month, lo and behold, it popped up on my Facebook page that there was the Phoenix Birth Foundation, and they were offering a full scholarship for midwifery training specifically for Black women.
Wow.
And I was like, what? This has to be for me.
Yeah. So how many women went through the program with you?
2. There was 2 women one. There was 2 of us total. So 2 of us total that have gone through the program. My fellow student, she's still working toward her CPM and licensure as well. And I just finished in April of this year.
So are we good? So what is, it looked like I froze. So what is that path to being what is the path to becoming a midwife? So you had to go through the training, and then now, mm-hmm. So do you have your own birth center, or are you're a midwife that people contract with you individually? So what is that path like? What are the hours? Because it's almost to me like you're a doctor.
I don't know. I feel that way sometimes, but I think to become a midwife, the path that I chose, and there's 2 different routes that one may choose. One of them is you go through what's called a MEEC accredited school. So it's almost like college. You sign up, you take courses, and then either during that time or after, you have an apprenticeship. So you work along with a certified and licensed midwife through births, and they help you with kind of the hands-on didactic training of it. The path that I took is the historical path of midwifery. I was an apprentice with Michelle Luttrell, who is a midwife, and she has been for over 30 years now. Wow. And I worked hand in hand with her, you know, going to births with her, learning from her. And in the beginning, I have to be honest with you, better. So I was terrified, like I was scared. So, you know, my role may have just been charting, like I'm just writing down everything that happened, because it's like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then eventually you gain a little more confidence and you do a little more. And then you do a little more. And by the end of your training, you are what you call a primary under supervision. So you're doing everything, but being supervised by your preceptor. She's watching over you and making sure that you're doing everything right. And also correcting your mistakes, because what I found on my path was it was important to embrace those mistakes, because I'm a recovering perfectionist, right? I'm being reformed. So everything is not going to go perfectly. So what happens when it doesn't? You know, how do we correct things? How do we reconcile when we've done something wrong? That was an important lesson along the path too.
So when you, as a midwife, then when you say everything, so I went the traditional route. So that in the traditional route is everything, all of the planning. And then when going into all of the, the plan before, all the checkups, does it include all
Mm-hmm.
of the checkups? And then actually,
Right.
like when labor becomes active, all of the different steps of labor, you are the person that is there.
Right. Right.
And do you
So
have a doula that works with you also, or an assistant, or does the family step in that role?
it depends. It depends. I've had both experiences where there is a professional doula that is there and supporting, and that's always wonderful. But I'm biased because I was a doula for so long. I think they're an essential part of the team. But also there were families that chose not to have a doula, and they had auntie and grandma and everybody else step up and love on the family. And sometimes it's a doula and that. But yeah, when say everything, I mean everything. So meeting them in early pregnancy, 6, 7 weeks pregnant, nurturing through that part, thinking about all the morning sickness and the aches and the tiredness and what can we do and what suggestions. Then working with them through their second trimester where they're feeling good again and they're getting everything ready and they're excited, and but also reconciling those emotions that they may have about becoming parents or becoming parents again.
Yeah.
Um, because just because you've done it once, that doesn't mean all the challenges go away, right? There's still things to be addressed. And then in the third trimester, where we're big and heavy with baby and preparing for the labor and thinking that this day is going to come, that I really got to do it, the day is imminent. Yeah, and then getting that early labor call, Lakisha, my water broke. Lakisha, I've been contracting for the last hour. I don't think they're going away. So supporting and helping them through that. And then as things get more active and things get more intense for mom and for the family, being there through that, pushing, watching that unfold and happen. There's really not a lot that I do other than tell you, you got it. And finally helping them to welcome their baby. And sometimes that's in my hands, sometimes it's in daddy's hands, sometimes in mom's hands. Um, and then also another big piece, and something that I love about the type of midwifery that I do, is the postpartum care.
Mm.
It thinking back and reflecting on my own birth experience, having a baby, staying there for a day, 2 days, going home, and then you don't see anybody for 6 weeks. There's really no support. There's really no, other than asking friends and family, or now is getting online and asking Dr. Google, what's going on. You don't have any professional to really turn to. So something that I'm really passionate about is doing the postpartum work. So as a midwife, and I am a home birth midwife, to go back and answer one question. I'm a home birth midwife. I don't work out of a birth center. So parents contact me and hire me directly. And we follow the prenatal schedule, and I'm there for their birth and their postpartum care. So I go and see my families 24 hours after baby has been born, 3 days after baby's been born, and then at 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and then our last official visit is 6 weeks. So I found it to be really beneficial for my first time moms and even my fifth and sixth and seventh time moms. Sometimes I don't really feel like I'm doing a whole lot. Sometimes we're just having a cup of coffee and talking and hanging out on the couch. But just to have someone there, someone to check on you, someone to say, are you doing okay? Because we know how quickly the attention focuses to the baby and not so much the mom and the parents anymore. So I'm happy to take on that role.
What there's so much that I'm feeling right now, and part of what I'm feeling is there's some your way is so welcoming and nurturing that I almost like that I wish that I could go back and
Oh,
and do things differently, because the whole experience, the way that you lay it out, and I think that I had thought about that before, but really that idea of being able to bring your baby into the world with support and guidance, and
oh
then
yeah.
also that support, that checkup support,
Mm-hmm.
because you know what, you get your appointments for your baby, you don't
Right.
necessarily get appointments for you for your wellness. And I've seen a lot of women that suffer from that decline,
Mhm.
and that's known as postpartum depression. But there's so much that happens within that physiologically. And then I think also the effects of any of the medications that are given to you that make
Mhm.
to that. So having somebody that you connect with, I imagine that a lot of people consider you part of their family at this point.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's amazing to get, 7, 8 year olds that I've doulaed for. I get their back to school pictures. I get just random things on my phone, that come up. So and so started karate this week, and I get a picture, and it's just like, oh. So yeah, it is very, very special. Now with social media, I get to kind of see my babies grow up, so
Yeah.
to speak, and that is just really amazing.
So how did you become a doula? So how did because you knew so you fought the calling, like the big calling, but you answered the call.
I
Like
was I had to
text,
suck my
you
feet
got a
in a
text
little
and
bit.
you answered the text. And then the phone rang and you were like, I'm not gonna answer it, but then you answered it eventually. So
Right.
how did that line up? Going back to
Um, I had a doula with my twins' birth.
Mhm.
The
Okay.
hospital that I gave birth to them was really pretty progressive.
Mhm.
They had a free doula program. So any woman who wanted a doula, you could sign up, and the doulas worked on shifts. So depending on when you went into labor, you got so and so who was on call right now. And they had a meet the doula night where you could come in and meet everybody, but you didn't know who you were going to get. So in labor, um, my water broke at home, and my husband and I rushed to the hospital. I kick him now because it turned into one of those movie scenes where he's driving 80 miles per hour down the road and there was absolutely nothing going on. I wasn't even having contractions yet. But anyway, we get there to the hospital, and it felt like as soon as I got checked in, those contractions just started coming. And I was like, ooh, and I was doing okay, but I was starting to struggle a little bit. And the nurse said, well, did you want a doula? And I was like, yes, give me the doula. So this sweet little white lady named Cynthia Valentine, that was her name. I know her to this day. I wish I could track her down and find her, because I'd send her pictures of my 16-year-old. Like I get pictures of my babies, my doula babies. Um, she came into the room, and she knew exactly what to say. Like she knew exactly what to do. Let's try this. And I'm like, okay. And then you do it and you feel better. And she said, okay, let's try this now. It's just like she knew exactly what I needed. And that experience just left such a mark on me. I ended up with an amazing doula, an amazing lactation consultant, after the twins were born. And I just thought to myself, I want to do that for somebody else. Like, I really want to be that person for another family. So my journey began with just helping out family first. Like I gave all the unsolicited advice, this is what you should do, and you need to get a doula, and you need to do so and so. And some listened and some didn't. And then it turned into friends of family, because they would tell their friends, well, my cousin, she knows a whole lot about birth. You need to call her. So then I ended up working with friends of family. And it wasn't until I moved here to Phoenix, when I was pregnant with my youngest daughter, that I really had the thought that, I should turn this into like a business. I should do this for people that I maybe don't even know. I should branch out a little bit. So at that point, I took a training with a national doula organization, and I began to work, privately. I also began to work with a couple of public health organizations doing doula work and also teaching childbirth education. I became a Lamaze childbirth teacher, childbirth educator. And that's kind of the way that it went. I just jumped right in there, and doors opened up for me that I wasn't even expecting or looking for. And that's just kind of how you know that you're on more of a divine path, when you don't have to force anything and you're not pushing anything, but it kind of just unfolds for you, and it happens, and you just have to follow suit.
I'm so glad that you answered the call.
Yes, me too.
Continue on that journey, and for your families also. So there was something that you said that I want to follow up on.
Mm-hmm.
So you call yourself a reformed perfectionist, and you also said that it's really important to embrace your mistakes.
Yeah.
And so those both of those things say so much about, I think, one, just about life and about
Mm-hmm.
um your belief about life,
Mm-hmm.
and also possibly also about your experience. So can you and anything, any way that you want, can you expand on either one or both of those topics?
Yeah. In my analysis of myself, I found that growing up, I was always a good student. You know, I was a really good student, really good test taker. I got a lot of accolades for academics and different things. And I think that led to this belief that the more perfect that I was, the more hundreds that you get, the more A pluses that you get, then that was attached to my worth as a person.
Mm.
So
Because
as an
you were getting a lot of accolades from your
right,
academic,
that's
and,
how you garnered the praise. So
and it was
then as an adult,
right, academics, it was probably easy for you learning.
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. You know, I'm just one of those people. I'm more of an auditory learner, so I can just sit and listen.
Mhm.
I don't have to do a whole lot of extra, you know, in order to just get it. And that was enough, you know, that I may be pretty smart too, but that was enough to make pretty good grades in school, you know.
I've
So
already
then as an
I
adult,
diagnosed you and analyzed you. I agree. Yes. Very intelligent, very bright. Absolutely.
thank
Yes.
you.
I,
I like to think
cognitive
so.
thinking skills. Yes, absolutely.
So as an adult, there's you don't get a lot of opportunities to take tests and get A's and get, you know, and get hundreds. So how do we garner that praise if that's attached to how we feel about ourselves as a person? So then it just became our everyday task and our work task and our things that we do for our family. It has to be right? Because if it's not right, then that means that maybe there's something not right with me, or maybe I failed in some way if it's not just so and not perfect. Um, and I think that that belief, you know, in my early adulthood, you know, and I'm talking about in my 20s, you know, maybe my early 30s, having that belief about myself and just that belief about the world, actually stole a lot of joy away from me. Like it took a lot of joy out of life. And it wasn't until, funny enough, crazy, this is classic Lakisha story. It, I discovered this blog about home decorating because, you know, I wanted my house to be nice. I wanted to be perfect. So I started to follow this blog about home decorating. And the owner of that blog's mantra was, it doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. And I said, ooh, it doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. And she would demonstrate that in her blog. Like she'd show you what it looked like behind the curtain, you know, like this looks good, right? But look at how I had to put this up here. Like this is so tacky, but it looks so beautiful. And I was like, well, you know, she may be onto something. And that just sparked a kind of a paradigm shift in the way that I viewed the world, in the way that I viewed myself, and the way that I went about things. And in my midwifery training, well, previous to that, if I made a mistake or if I felt like I was wrong, then my first response would be to retreat. Oh, nope, can't do that. Nope, I wasn't perfect. Nope, scrap it, throw it away, right? But because my training meant so much to me, because it was so important to not only myself, but I also felt like there was a responsibility that I had to my family, because my training took me away. Like it took me away from my house. I was as busy as I've ever been in my life. And there would be days that I was at a birth or births and then come home and still not be able to be present because I'm tired, you know? So I felt a strong responsibility to my family and also a strong responsibility to my community. I'm one of only 2 certified and licensed midwives here in the state of Arizona, Black licensed midwives here in the state of Arizona.
One of 2.
One of 2 Black licensed and certified midwives in the state of Arizona.
In the state.
So there was a strong responsibility that I felt to my community to finish this process. So as I began, and when I say mistakes, I don't mean anything life or death. I mean, I sent in the wrong labs. Something got mixed up and we got to do a blood draw again, or we have to do this again, or I may have misspoken and said something in not the right way, which can be important in a medical setting. So things like that, it brought back to me that feeling of wanting to be perfect and wanting to be right, and confronting the fact that it's virtually impossible as a human being to always be right and never make a mistake. Right. And if I make a mistake, then what am I going to do? Am I going to quit? No, I can't quit. So it called me to the carpet and made me have to stand up, pull up my big girl pants and say, I messed that up. I messed that up. What can we do to fix it? And that, I think, was one of the huge learnings that I took away from my training. And now, I don't try to make mistakes. I try to avoid them as much as I did before. But then when they come up, there's not that huge angst and that feeling and those overwhelming emotions around it. It's just, mess that up. All right, let's fix it and let's move on. And that to me has added so much joy back into my work, because I'm not beating myself up over these little things that really at the end of the day don't mean a whole lot. So I learned that lesson in my professional life. I'm trying to apply it as much as I can in my personal life, which I'm sure my family is very thankful for. But yeah, I'm a reformed perfectionist. I'm moving away from that perfection and realizing things can be beautiful and they can be just right, and they can also not be perfect.
Yeah. I love that. I love that the message that you needed came to you and that you listened.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was surprising. I didn't expect to get that out of this whole process. It wasn't the expectation that, I would learn so much about myself, but I think that is a part of being a midwife, really learning, analyzing and bettering yourself so you can show up better.
I really think, let me see, am I stuck? Did I get stuck, or am I okay? Am I okay? I think I got stuck. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Am I stuck? Am I unstuck?
Uh-oh.
Am I unstuck?
You're unstuck.
Okay.
You're unstuck.
I got stuck. So I've learned that sometimes when people are perfectionists, it's because they have a high need for control. And sometimes that comes from, a lot of times that comes from things potentially happening when they're children, when they feel like they don't have control. Like something happened when they didn't feel that they didn't have control, or also like just circumstances that somebody had to be in control. And that can also turn people into being like overcompensators. So like when a crisis happens, that's the person that gets everything lined up, gets everybody, okay, you do this, he like takes control. And that's how they that's part of their role in their functioning. Does any of that align with your experience?
I would say so, yeah. Yes. I mentioned in my introduction that I have 4 parents, so some of that I think aligns with your question. I'm adopted. So my mother and father, my biological mother and father, were very young when they conceived me. They were 14 and 15 years old when they conceived me. And being so young, and this is kind of a Southern thing, there was no formal adoption and all of that. When things like that happen, you had other family members who would step up and who would take care of that child. And it wasn't anything, like I said, it wasn't anything formal or court wise or all of that. You just did what you had to do to make sure that the children were taken care of. So my mother and father had me, and they were very young and weren't able to take care of me. So my great aunt and uncle essentially adopted me. And for a long time in my life, I held a lot of resentment for my biological parents.
Mm.
They both went on and had other children. They had, my father got married, had children. My mother had more children. And there was always that question in the back of my mind, well, why couldn't they take care of me? And this is, childhood Lakisha. This is kid Lakisha, Why couldn't they take me? Why didn't they keep me? Why was I the one that was given away? And I think you're absolutely right. In my response to that, it was like, okay, I'm not just going to be tossed around and sitting here, that I'm going to take control. I'm going to make sure that everything is right. And I want my family to be right. And I'm going to be a good mom. And I'm going to take care of my children and keep my children. Now, I had all of these ideas in my head until I actually became a parent.
Mm.
And I was able to see and recognize the great sacrifice it takes to not give a child away, but to choose what's best for that child. That's what happened to me. There was no maliciousness in that act as I thought when I was a child, but it was a great amount of love that had to be shown forth and for me. And because of that sacrifice and that love that my biological parents had, I was able to have a really good life as a child. My mother and father, my great aunt and uncle who raised me like their own, loved me like I wanted for nothing in my childhood. And would that have been the case with 14-year-old parents? We don't know. But I now can look at my biological parents and with great respect and admiration and say thank you to them for that sacrifice that they made and for how much they loved me enough to allow the circumstances of my life to play out the way that they did. But I definitely think in some of that, there was that need for control. And also in my own family structure, there's that overcompensation. My children call me extra all the time. Like, Mom, you just so extra. Why you gotta be so extra? Like, why does every party have to be extra? Why do you have to? I just show up extra for them. And I think that maybe that overcompensation and, I'm the mom that I have. So yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing them with us.
Yeah.
I think like the love is one of the hardest, most difficult, most challenging, most heartbreaking acts.
Mm.
Like real love, real love
Mm-hmm.
like that. To really love your child, sometimes it breaks you, and I can't imagine at 14 and 15 everything that they were feeling when they made that decision for you.
Right, having a 13-year-old and at one point having two 14-year-olds and two 15, I couldn't imagine, trying to be a parent and trying to navigate this world and raise children and teach them everything. In part of my work in public health, I was privileged to work with teen parents.
Mm-hmm.
And, whenever I got that opportunity, I would always think back to my own parents. And you reflect and think, wow, what would they have done in this situation? What would they, how would all of this had worked out? I would always ask myself that question, and that would lead me to love on them a little bit more, and to definitely make sure they had everything that they needed, because it's hard. I mean, I was 24 when my twins were born. And I didn't feel ready. I felt inept as a parent. I felt like I have no clue what I'm doing. And I was 24 years old with a stable life, married and all of that. So imagine not having that sort of stability in your life and still trying to parent.
Yeah, 10 years earlier.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think the thing that I've learned, because an educator, um, one of the things I've learned working with youth is that, like, they, even though your parents were 14 and 15, your mom's, she became a mother at 14,
Yeah.
and he became a father at 15.
Yeah.
And those roles and that love, like that shift, it doesn't lessen that
Mm-hmm.
shift.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like it doesn't lessen the pain and the heartbreak that I'm sure that both of them went through in releasing you, you
Yeah.
know. And I also think of it, you know, what it's also, in a way, they also were really loving themselves and each other,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think that also is really, really important, to give themselves that grace and that, you know, that space to be able to have those years to grow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
have you have powerful blood, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Like there's no way, the strength of that, and also the protection. There used to be that show that had people who were adopted looking for their families.
Mm.
It was, I don't remember the name of it, but what I loved about watching it is, it affirmed for me the power of prayer. In that, like, the moms who were found, and they were like, they would tell their kids. So there were a couple of things, but they would tell their kids, like, I prayed for you every single day. And
Wow.
they would find, like, there was one picture that the mother or the father had carried with them for their entire lives. And so,
Right.
like, they were always being loved, even though they knew that they, whatever the situation was, but they were always being loved. And they
Mm-hmm.
were always being, so, you know, whether you believe in prayer or don't, but for me, that thought of having that intense love for somebody, that intense pouring towards them, you know.
Right.
And for the most part, the people that on the show, at least, that were adopted, you know, they had really good lives, and they were very grateful to their
Mm-hmm.
parents,
Mm-hmm.
to their bio parents. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So, Lakisha, how is your family doing in these times? How is your husband? How are
Mm-hmm.
your children? How is your family unit? How are you guys doing?
That's a great question. I probably have to answer it individually for each for each family member because we're all on our different bandwidths as far as things go. My husband has been at home. His job and his situation has allowed him to be at home for the most part over the past couple of months, which is something that we're really grateful for. One, because his team that he usually works with, many of them tested positive for
Mm,
COVID-19 and for the virus. I don't think there has been any deaths among his work group, but there has been some positive diagnosis and treatment done, and folks have recovered, which we're very thankful for. But the idea of him contracting the disease is or the virus is very scary for us because he does have pre-existing conditions. And then also, one of my children has a life-threatening disorder.
mm,
So she's been in the house under quarantine this whole time, and we've been really, really careful with her. And that's been hard because she's a young person. She wants to get out. She wants to do things. She wants to, and what do you mean I got to stay in the house? I can't go anywhere. If I do, I got to wear a mask. And, so thankfully she is of an age, she's 13, that almost 13, that, we can logically explain to her what's going on and what's happening. And she understands intellectually,
oh,
but of
good.
course, the heart and the body and the spirit, want more. And then even at this point, we're letting things up, in my opinion, or we're reopening things, in my opinion, for economic reasons,
Yeah.
but not necessarily for health reasons. So, we don't know how long she's going to be in the situation that we're in, and how long we have to be super cautious within our household, just to protect her and to help her. My twins, they get it, they understand, but it's still hard, still very, very hard. We are a homeschooling family. We have been since their whole life, so in that regard, it makes it a little bit easier because they're not used to going to school. They do have their friends. My oldest work, they do have some things that are outside of the home that we've had to make adjustments for because of everything that's going on. So it's been a kind of a hard transition initially. But we're working into our grooves, and thankfully we like each other enough that we can we're okay, albeit in the same household. So as far as COVID-19 and the virus goes, we're okay. The instances that have happened in the last week have been much, much tougher. The displays of racism and violence and murder. All of my children are old enough that they are on social media, so there's no protecting them in that regard. They're seeing what's happening, they're taking that in. And I'm doing my best as a parent to try to help them to process all that's going on, because, I shared on my social media page that sometimes my son walks to work. He can't get his license until this coming month. So in order to feel more grown and more independent, he'll walk to work, and his work is literally right across the street from our subdivision. And there was a day that he came downstairs, he was dressed for work, and he was like, "All right, Mom, I'm about to go." And something in my spirit just wouldn't let me let him go. Like he walks all the time and it's no big deal, but there was something about that day that I was like, "No, I'm going to drive you. I'll drive you over today." And he was like, "No, really, it's fine. I got plenty of time. I can walk." And I'm like, "No, I'm going to take you. I'm going to take you." And he just, looked at me like, "Oh, Mom's being weird, whatever, I'll go."
So extra.
But I was being extra, exactly. My mom's so extra. But it was just a few days after that we heard about our brother in Florida, I believe, Ahmad, who was gunned down on the street. And I was like, "Oh my God, was I feeling that in some way? Was that it's just such a coincidence that right within days of each other that those two experiences happened." Now with the murder of George Floyd, we just had a conversation last night about my daughter who is driving. And my husband was saying, "Yeah, we really need to talk to you about what you need to do if you get pulled over while you're driving." And she said, "No, I don't really do anything. I don't break the laws. I'm driving the speed limit. I stop for the stop signs. I do all of that." And before I could catch it, it came out of my mouth. And I told her, "You could do all those things right. You could do all of those things. You could make no mistakes and still end up like our brothers and sisters that we see on TV and losing your life." And when I said that to her, I could see that it impacted her, but it impacted me even more so, because it's like my heart kind of came to that realization as well. So it's been really, really exhausting. One, just taking in all of the images and all of the information and all of the opinions and all of the things, and trying to reconcile, what does that mean for my family? I have a Black husband and a Black son and Black daughters, who are going to be out here in this world. Can I realistically fear for them all of the time? And that's kind of where I am. And that's exhausting. It's tiring. It hurts. It's painful.
This
so
is
we're having a tough time over here.
It reminds me a little bit of so I'm a Harry Potter fan. And in the Harry Potter world, there was this magical clock. But there was a mother who has a whole bunch of kids and her husband. And at one point, all of the so on the clock, the magical clock, it would tell her where her family was. So it had like a picture of everybody like in her family. And at one point the clock went for all of them at mortal, it was called mortal peril. And so that idea that all of them were could at any moment were close to death. And it just dawned, like the way that you're describing that, like our Black community, our Black fathers, our Black sons, our Black sisters and brothers, and like they're all at mortal peril. And that as a mother, um what that does to your soul and your spirit as a mother.
It is heavy. It's, I mean, it's the best way I can describe it. Just a continuous heaviness that you carry with you, a continuous sadness, almost like you could describe it as just a cloak of just sadness and heaviness and pain that you feel wrapped in and that you want to let go, but you can't. It's almost like you're afraid to let your guard down. You know, you're afraid to, I mean, there's been points where we've said things and we've been hanging out, and you're almost afraid to laugh because it's like, oh, can't get too excited. We can't forget what's going on and what's happening in our community.
You know, that
So
that
it's hard.
it reminds me of when somebody very close to you in your family passes and passes away, and every moment after they pass is it's like the first laugh without them, the first the this without them. Like there's that space of grief where what you're talking about, where like it's almost like you're together with your family and you're telling a story and you're laughing, but then the somberness comes back because they're gone. So it's this state of grief without really an end.
Right. Right.
So how I'm not frozen, I'm thinking, I'm sorry. I um how are you how how are you moving, I think, forward as a family? So because that's all that we can do, right? Like all we can do right now is take care of ourselves and take care of our family and have conversations that you're having with your family. And you know, and at some point go to bed tonight and wake up tomorrow.
Right.
And then go through the process again until, you know, just going through the process. So how are you able to maintain joy or maintain, because I'm going to tell you before you answer, just let me tell you, our conversation earlier, just getting to know you, hearing you introduce yourself, talking about yourself, it was a moment of relief. It was a moment of respite. And so hearing you talk about your work, it was like my respite care moment. And which is why I think this time is so important, this nightly check-in where we can just have a moment of care for ourselves. So how are you doing that with your family, or what do you think are some things that you can do?
Number one, we are prayerful people. We try to keep God at the center of our lives, and we pray almost constantly, you know, for ourselves. And I think that's beautiful that you mentioned that, putting yourself first. I think that's something that we have to get back to doing. So prayer, 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 number one. And also having, I'd say to my children, an attitude of gratitude. So even in the midst of all this darkness and pain and suffering, what do we have to be grateful for? We have each other. We have the fact that we're here together. We have the fact that we can sit down at the dinner table and we have food to eat, and we have running water, and we have shelter over our heads. So coming back to the basics and saying, even in the midst of all of this, we are being taken care of. We are being loved in a way that helps to give us the strength to get up the next day, and do the things that we need to do and take care of each other and take care of ourselves and work also to better our communities. So prayer and gratitude, I think, are the number one things that my family is leaning on right now to help us get through these times.
Well, and I'm going to take that and recommend that that's something that all of us do, is remember that gratitude. Like, remember, there has to be, like, we just have to get back, we have to shift the energy. And so shifting our energy from,
Mhm.
being grateful, and then that focused, concentrated thoughts and energy towards love and towards peace and
Yeah.
towards healing are so important. So my gratitude is for you, for coming on tonight, and for who you are in this world. Um, I want to have you come back on the show, because I want to talk about your gardening, because I think
Uh-huh.
it's really important. I didn't social media stalk you like too much, like just a little bit, just a little bit. I saw your beautiful family, okay. But I would love to have you come back and talk about gardening the earth, and then also just sharing some of your beautiful energy, if you would
I
love
would
to.
be honored. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I would love that.
So thank you for coming on tonight. And I'm just going to say goodbye from here. We're ending a couple minutes late. But
Oh,
thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Please stay safe. Please
mhm.
take care of yourselves. Please know that I am grateful for you, and I love you, and I am praying for you and for your loved ones. And um, please look for those moments of peace, because you need them and you deserve them. Good night.
That's right.